Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Greetings from Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs, who is away. Just wanted to say thank you for taking time out of your schedules to attend this. And on behalf of the mayor, just share his emphasis on the importance of the work. As you know, mental health has been a priority for his administration for one full term and now the part of a second, and will continue to be for the balance of the term. Special recognition to the members of the Mental Health Court Steering Committee for the time and effort they've given. Our partners at Helen Ross McNabb, wonderful partners in so many ways with the county, and a great deal of work has been done up to this point, but more remains to be done. So with that, I'll turn it over to the committee chair, our clerk Mike Hammond. Thank him for his work in moving this forward as well.
Commissioners, we thank you for being here today. We will be asking you at your meeting this afternoon to give preliminary approval to a grant from the state for $236,000, which will completely fund for 1 year a mental health court for Knox County. The goals of the mental health court are very simple. It's to reduce the inmate population and to take these folks, provide treatment, and to make them productive citizens. This is an 18 to 24 month program, so it's not something that is a 30, 60, or 90-day program. As we go through the presentation today, I would like to remind you that we are in the beginning stages of implementation. We hope to begin in August or September, and there will be no doubt tweaks that we will need to make to the program as we move forward. Successful programs across the nation who have successful mental health courts say that people who complete the program, the success rate is between 70 and 80%. What that means is they have completed the program and they do not go back into the system. And so that's going to be our goal here today. We have several people that are going to be talking with you today, and this is our agenda. We want to talk about the timeline, the specialized courts, specifically about eligibility and admission. We want to address the contract and also the county benefits for specialized courts. Just to give you an idea, this all began back in 2018 when we started looking at the idea of a mental health court for Knox County, and then we all know what happened after that. We had a thing called COVID, and that put everything on hold. But in February of last year, the mayor formed an exploratory committee, and you will hear from some of those members here today. We have visited Davidson County. We have talked with the folks at Miami-Dade. We have talked to folks in New York. We have talked with the state extensively. We have made site visits to the 10th Judicial District, which includes Bradley, Monroe, Madison, and Polk counties. We have been to Hamilton County, and we have met monthly since February of last year. And we feel like that we are at the point now to ask you all to approve the contract for next year. The Exploratory Committee has 12 members. You see them on the screen there. As you can see, it's the Attorney General, folks from Helen Ross McNabb. We have Jonathan Cooper from the Private Defense Bar. In addition to Sharm Allen, we have Sam Lee, who is our Chief Deputy. Chuck Cerny is going to be the judge overseeing it. Leanne Human-Hilliard, Candace Allen, and Mona Blanton-Kitts, who are with Helen Ross McNabb. We have Eric Lutton and Steve Sword, who is also part of our committee. And of course, there are lovely pictures. We have formed a mental health court advisory board. Now, we've gone from an exploratory committee to an advisory board. This board will be meeting monthly, and then we will be meeting quarterly to oversee and make sure that we're on track. If there are anything that needs to be changed, we will be able to address it very quickly. And as you can see, Jonathan Cooper from the private bar is also there, as well as Eric Lutton, Sharm Allen, Steve Sword, Chuck Cerny, and myself. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Chuck Cerny, who is going to be the judge overseeing the process, and he will start giving you some of the details about how the mental health court will operate in Knox County. Judge?
Mike, thank you so much, and thank you all for giving us an opportunity to discuss our efforts to create and implement a mental health court. I want to make sure that I don't tell you a bunch of things that you already know, but just briefly, the mental health courts are very, very similar And when we have observed functioning mental health courts that are working well and complying with what could be called best practices, what we discover is that they have great similarities to what we're already doing and what we're already doing successfully. You may know that Knox County's recovery court has historically been called drug court, and of course there were some bumps in the road about 12 years ago, give or take. Since that time, we've flourished because we have great staff, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved in recovery court for about 12 years now, and we've had great success. Our numbers are up, and we're doing very well, and we're having good success with respect to what might be called success rates. That is to say, people turning their lives around, getting control of their addiction issues, and not coming back through the criminal justice process. As a result of that success, we established a Veterans Treatment Court as well, and we've helped multiple veterans. Veterans Treatment Court has some slight distinctions from Recovery Court, and we have a certain amount of advantage in the sense that we make use of veteran mentors who volunteer. This is not paid staff. These folks help our veteran participants get through the Veterans Treatment Court. And once again, as Mike said, we're not talking about 30, 60, or 90 days. We're talking about 12, 18, 24 months in many cases as people work on changing their lives for the better and not coming back through the criminal justice process. Those things having been said, we've been working very hard to get our mental health court to the point where it can come online and actually serve the first participant, we hope, in August. And so we're trying to, that's what we're trying to get across at this point, not only to a county commission, but to the public at large. We're wanting the public to realize that many people who become criminal justice system involved are in fact folks who are also suffering from mental illness. And let's just be honest, there are many times when folks are accused of crimes, but they have also been victims of crimes. There are many times when folks who are accused of crimes have also been homeless, and that is causally related to some extent to mental illness in many cases. As a matter of fact, I think if you spoke with the sheriff, he'd probably emphasize that he runs the biggest treatment facility for folks with mental illness in our area. If you are talking about population, there's a lot of folks who are incarcerated who are suffering from mental illness and could lead better lives if we could provide services and if we could provide incentive for those folks to participate in services, and that's what a mental health court would do. We could go ahead and go on to the next slide. I don't want to read PowerPoint slides to you. I do want to emphasize that the Tennessee legislature has created what they called the Mental Health Treatment Act of 2022, and as a result, the state has authorized funding to help the various counties in Tennessee set up mental health courts. We would not be the first mental health court. There's already mental health courts that are working very well. Davidson County's got a great mental health court. Hamilton County is complying with best practices and doing very well. There are several functioning mental health courts that we would model our mental health court after, and we would intend to, comply with the statute. And I want you to be aware that the statute describes what a mental health court is, and it's available, and we can get you copies of the statute if you'd like to see it. It defines severe and persistent mental illness. It defines violent offender. It defines non-adversarial approach. You're probably already aware that when folks are criminal justice system involved, you can take the adversarial approach, go to a trial, perhaps maybe resolve the case by agreement between the parties. But mental health court would be modeled after recovery court or veterans treatment court, where you take a non-adversarial approach to try and help folks get through their criminal justice experience in a way that benefits them in the form of treatment and making positive changes in their lives. So we would be complying with 10 essential elements of a mental health court, and we will as the slide says, will be the 8th mental health court in Tennessee. So, all right, next slide, please. We're all awfully pretty, as you can tell. That's a group of folks. This is the staff from Knox County's Recovery Court and Veterans Treatment Court, and some of the folks who will be helping, and some of the staff from the mental health court that we intend to get started. December 2022, we did one of the smartest things I've ever seen happen, ever, at least in my opinion. We had some great folks working on this advisory board. We had lots of great meetings. I enjoy getting together with those folks because they're also my friends, and they'll be speaking to you here in just a little bit. But like a lot of committee work, when you're trying to do this kind of thing, we needed somebody to get us off a dead center, and I'm proud to tell you that Casey Stone was a really smart hire. She's going to be the coordinator. She was hired December of 2022. I'm very proud of her, and because of her, all kinds of stuff gets done. I'm excited about it, and she holds me accountable so that I make sure that I do stuff that we're supposed to do to get this mental health court online. We've got our participant handbook. We've got our policies and procedures manual. Probably we'll need to have some tweaks here and there. We've been working on the admissions process to try and make sure that that's done in such a way that we protect our community and we're conscientious about community safety, but that we also serve people who are affected by serious mental illness and also criminal justice system involved. Well, shucks, February of this year, I guess I got appointed. So the fact of the matter is, mental health courts, like veterans treatment courts and recovery courts, are actually a function of the criminal court judges, the circuit level judge. The criminal court judges in Knox County have asked me to serve in this function, and they've issued an order giving me legal authorization to perform these functions. It was June of 2023 that we hired our first case manager, and we anticipate that we'll have a second case manager to accommodate the number of participants that we anticipate serving. And we anticipate that we'll be able to handle somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 when we're really up and going. Probably won't start with 30 participants, and if we find that we are able to serve more than that, we'll probably need to have an additional case manager. All righty.
You want to introduce our case manager? She's going to speak next.
Well, I would be honored. Our case manager is Mary O'Neill. She's got all kinds of different great experience, but she has served this population for many years in different capacities, and I'm proud that she's our case manager as well. Mary O'Neill.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here and hearing us. Today is officially my first day on the job, so we're starting off with a presentation. I've had the honor of working in Knox County for many years and kind of working around some of the systems. I started with the Knoxville Police Department. With the police department as a victim advocate with their domestic violence program. After that, I worked for the YWCA and then moved to the district attorney's office as a victim witness coordinator. Moved to juvenile court as a case manager, and then went to school. Went back to UT for my master's in social work, and got to intern with Cornerstone, the public defender's office.
Yeah. Can you just hold on one second? Yeah. We'll wait till they leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You may want to pull the microphone.
Okay. I'm short, so, okay. So a variety of experience just with the police department here, with juvenile court, the district attorney's office. And I worked with the sheriff's department for the past 3 years with their mental health team. And so I got to see there's amazing things that are happening in Knox County, and a lot of wonderful people that have been working to try to help people with serious mental illness. And so I'm really excited to come on board with this court and to be involved. A little bit about, I'm just going to kind of look at some of the slides. Eligibility, we're looking 18 years or older, resident of Knox County. Criminal justice involved, which can be a pending case in Knox County, or maybe the person's currently on probation, but they'll be able to work through their case or their charges and probation while participating in the court. It is voluntary. We do have a written agreement. I think one important thing is that with any type of mental health service, as well as criminal justice service, that people understand, what they're participating in, the consequences that happen on different experiences. So that's gone over in detail with the person's defense attorney and also with staff. And that we look at a diagnosis with a serious mental illness. And that specifically, we're looking at something where perhaps mental health or mental illness has been a barrier for a person to be successful with probation, complying with treatment, or things that, our case management's meant to support the person through this process, and maybe bringing together some of the great services we have to keep them engaged, involved. And so that's part of where we're going with our case management. Must be legally competent. There's some legal parameters of this person to be able to understand what they're participating in their defense. And we don't want to have a person that can come into the program that can't complete it successfully. And they must agree to be in treatment. We want to encourage people to participate in therapy, sometimes substance use treatment, any type of treatment that we think will help them be successful. And sometimes therapy's hard. Sometimes recovery is hard. And so hopefully our staff can help the person kind of keep on track, keep going, make it through some of these things that have been a barrier in the past. We have certain diagnoses that we've looked at, and this is true with mental health courts in other counties, other states. But we're looking at things like psychotic disorders that can be schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorders, mood disorders, including bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and trauma-based disorders. Working in the jail, I was really impacted by the fact that a lot of people, suffer major traumas through their lives, how they respond to that trauma, how they learn to overcome that, and if we can help in some healthy coping and move forward to be successful. And we look at, we'll look at also, we have clinical diagnoses that we may look at and get directions from our providers on just how best to help a person. And it says here, with early and consistent treatment, people with serious mental illness can manage their conditions. They can overcome challenges and lead meaningful and productive lives. And our hope is with this court, the encouragement they're getting from the bench, from the staff, that they're able to get this early intervention and it's consistent and it keeps going through the process. And then we have treatment providers. We're working on agreements with different agencies. We're not the actual provider of therapy. We're looking at our providers in the community. Moccasin Bend, that's the state mental health facility in Chattanooga. That is going to be more of a crisis, when we have somebody that has to be committed for inpatient treatment. But we're working a lot with McNabb, Peninsula, Cherokee Health, and then there's some other providers that we're also, hoping to partner with. And what we will be kind of asking is not necessarily what's happening in treatment, but is the person engaged? Are they participating? And if there's ways we can help keep that going. Just real quick rundown, I'm not going to, like Judge said, read through the PowerPoint slides, but it's a 5-phase to complete the program. There's court attendance weekly for the first phases, and then it starts to break as they're making progress, they're doing well, then they're coming to court every 2 weeks, then every 4 weeks till graduation. But court's meant to be an encouraging environment, when the person's doing well, that they're getting that praise, and that means a lot to come, from the court. And also we look at kind of where are the hiccups and where can we readdress and regroup. And then this is a more detailed grid of what happens, through the different phases. But we're beginning with like identifying goals, housing needs, scheduling appointments, working with probation, and then moving through the phases, you know, and hopefully to get where people are housed, they're in treatment, they're engaged, they're doing well in probation, making restitution, and anything else we can do to help them be successful. And I believe we've got Eric Lutton, but thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Lutton. I'm the public defender for the 6th Judicial District, which encompasses Knox County. My part of this in terms of presentation is really quite short. I just want to speak a little bit about how we're kind of going to identify and get people admitted into the procedure. It's not meaningfully going to change the way that we kind of currently do things. I mean, now we're obviously seeing all of our clients before they go to court. And we're already doing sort of intakes and evaluations to figure out if we believe that there are any mental health issues that need to be treated. This will obviously expand that slightly because we're going to have another avenue for them to go to. But as the attorneys in the public defender's office and then also in the private bar go see their clients, they'll be sort of doing analysis, like are these individuals that have a mental health issue such that we should be kind of diverting them through this program. And so some of the admission process is we'll start from the defense side. The state will also likely have some where they're recommending, hey, we've spoken to this family member, we think that there are mental health issues. So it can come from a lot of different sources, but as the defense attorney, we will be reviewing authorizations with the individuals. Obviously, the defense attorney will, because they're able to have one-on-one conversations with the client, will need to make sure that they are competent and not in crisis before we can begin the admissions process. And basically, we'll be going over with them one of the key components of this program. We want to make sure that we are providing individuals with opportunities and resources. We also need to make sure that we're not violating their rights in the process. And so one of the things that the defense attorney will be doing is going over with the client what their rights, what their obligations would be to make sure that they really understand and are going into it with eyes wide open. And we'd be going over all those forms and getting those signed off. Once the forms have been signed off, then we would basically send those over to the mental health court, and then from there, and obviously all of that has to be done. This is an agreement court, sort of. You know, we're not going to have anybody put in the court if the state believes that the person is not eligible for the court because of community safety issues or whatever. So it'll be a situation where people are in that court by agreement. And then we'll send that information on to the prosecution. We'll send that information on to the mental health court. And then that process will sort of take over, and they'll start doing their own individual evaluations and go from there. But I do not believe that the intake process or the admission process should be at all disruptive to us. I think that this it just provides us an opportunity to have an avenue for some of these very mentally ill people to go. And with that, I believe that Sam Lee is going to speak for the state.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon, Mr. Law Director. Thank you for having us. So as that slide showed, it's multiple parties involved in this process to approve somebody for mental health court. And from the prosecution's perspective, from General Allen's perspective, it's basically we're going to take the focus of a criminal prosecution and we're going to make it in favor of a defendant. So that's a big onus on us. And from the General's perspective, the prosecution process has three parts to it. It has a legal assessment, a deferred decision process, and an outcome process. So I'm just going to go through each one of those pretty quickly here. So when we're doing the legal assessment, we want to figure out, one, whether or not this defendant has a qualifying diagnosis or not. And really, the goal of that is to see if there's an indication of a need, but also if there's a compatibility for the kind of services that we're going to offer to this defendant. And what we're looking for is making sure that there's no acute type of mental health distress, and also that there is competency to understand the process. From there, we're going to want to make sure that it's one of the 5 qualifying serious mental health illnesses, and that's schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar, or major depression. But sometimes we'll look at severe anxiety or PTSD, and then we'll also look at those corollary substance misuse conditions that go along with those things. The next thing we're going to look at under qualifying diagnosis is whether or not there's a mental health history or not. We want to know whether or not this person has been involved in the criminal justice system already, and whether or not they have a clinical history of this type of behavior. And really what we're trying to get at is we're trying to figure out is what's the cause of this criminal conduct? Was it criminal intent, or was it a mental illness? And we're trying to get to that part of it. So next, we'll look at the community safety analysis, and there we're going to look at the charged offense. Is it a misdemeanor? Is it a felony? Is it a crime against a person? Is it a crime of violence? Is there a gun involved? And certain things will just not be considered. Like if there's serious or extreme violence, then that person just can't be considered for this program. The next thing we'll look at is criminal history. We'll look at their convictions locally and nationwide. And then we'll look to see if they have open cases. Are they on probation now? How are they complying? Have they been violating, or have they been doing what they're supposed to do? And then lastly, in that last tier, is the victim has to agree. General Allen's office is based on one of the pillars of being very concerned and putting victims first. So we want to make sure that, one, the victim agrees, and that we are properly being the voice of the victim. So in that sense, we are the guardians of the Victim Bill of Rights, which is in the Tennessee Constitution. And we want to make sure that, a lot of these cases involve family members and non-intimate partners. So we want to make sure that they feel safe, that they're okay with treatment, and that they're going to support this person through the treatment. So that's the first part of that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to conduct a legal assessment, and then if there's a big community safety issue, then we're going to go to that deferred decision process. And the first thing we're going to want is a complete clinical assessment of the current diagnosis and the history. And there we're going to want an independent assessment by a psychiatrist, a master's level clinician, and a social worker, and a case manager to help us understand the mental health profile of this person. We're also going to want to look at criminogenic risks, needs, appropriate level of service and treatment, and there we're going to look and ask, is there a sustainable treatment and service delivery plan? Can we do this and be successful at it? Is there a community safety transition plan? And also, what is the defendant's willingness and their likelihood of success? If we get through those two tiers, that we pretty much decided that this is a good candidate for mental health court. And if we get to that point, then at that juncture, it's up to us as prosecutors to basically create an incentive, but also make sure that there's accountability. So at that level, the participation incentive is going to be released from detention. A lot of the times, like Mr. Hammond said, we'll be releasing folks from jail. So that's the big incentive. Also, we'll be offering dispositional offers ranging from diversion, which is basically taking the charge out of the criminal justice system, to reducing the charges. So that's the carrot, for lack of a better word. And then the stick is basically the accountability part. They've got to either submit to their criminal behavior, or they've got to plead guilty on certain charges. And we expect them to abide by their agreement, to go through the treatment, to do everything that they're supposed to do, and also to comply with the participation order. And that's what the order looks like. And once that order is signed, and that'll be gone over by Mr. Lutton and his client, they'll agree to that, and then the judge will sign off on it, and then it's binding, and they're part of mental health court.
So as I said before, we're here today to ask you to approve the state contract, which is $236,000. I will tell you the state is very meticulous in the funding, and so we had to go back and forth with them on several occasions to make sure that they were okay with the contract. They are. It has been reviewed by Mr. Book and his staff, and so we're ready for your approval. The funding will take effect July the 1st. As soon as the mayor signs the contract, hopefully that you all will approve this afternoon. As we mentioned, the county benefits are, we hope to improve the public safety, improve the quality of life for these individuals, and hopefully save the taxpayer some dollars. In Davidson County, for example, they tell us that they believe that they have saved Davidson County $10 million in incarceration costs and just the basic costs. And so obviously we're not going to make any promises as to how much money, but we do believe that as we begin the program and as the program becomes successful, we will see some savings in terms of taxpayer dollars, but more importantly, we will also see the impact of people coming out of jail and leading productive lives. With that, we will be happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm not your legal person, and I know that you probably have some questions about how the process will work, and we have the folks here who can answer those questions. So, Madam Chair, we're happy to answer any questions that you and the commissioners might have.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hammond? I noticed, Mr. Hammond, I noticed in the documentation that's coming to commission today, as well as the presentation, that the state funding is just for year one, but the program is 12 to 18 months. So is there any guarantee? The state loves to fund things and go, great, go for it. What will the annual budget be, and where will it come from after 12 months?
The state has assured us these are recurring funds.
Okay.
So they have told us that we will get $236,000. They have assured us that we will at least get $236,000 in the years to come, and maybe more. As we are up and going, we can always request for more funding, and so, but they have assured us these are recurring funds.
And what do you expect? Do you have an anticipation of what the budget might level out once? I mean, startup costs, and then obviously as it levels into year 2, 3, 4, or not yet?
We don't know. We want to get up and going this year, and then we will consider what the needs are for the next for year 2, year 3, and year 4.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Judge Cerny, how will the and this may be a question for other members of the team as well, but how will the mental health inmates that are currently in our jail be prioritized and processed? Maybe this is for the general's team to gain access to this new court. So, I mean, that we're dealing with the immediate problem of what we have today. And is that
Well, when you ask the question that way, my personal sense would be that defense lawyers would be looking at a client seated across some table at the detention facility and thinking to themselves, how do I get this guy out of the pokey? And I think that a defense lawyer will prioritize seeking an avenue to get their client out of jail. And one of the
assuming
things,
they have an attorney? Maybe
What's
this
that?
is maybe assuming they have an attorney. Maybe this is where
well,
Mr. Lutton comes into play.
Certainly, if I find out about somebody who's in custody and doesn't have a lawyer, I'm going to try to get them on the docket, get them arraigned, and let them know they have a right to a lawyer, and try to get them an appointed lawyer if they can't afford to pay their own lawyer, of course. And so I don't anticipate that that would be a cause for much delay. Okay. And I don't mean to be trite or flip or whatever, but I don't think that there's going to be folks who would potentially be candidates to participate in the program who would not receive the attention of their defense lawyer, because this creates an advantage for someone who's incarcerated to potentially make an agreement to participate in treatment, and as a result, one of the benefits they get is they're no longer incarcerated, presumably. Presumably, we would help them with housing. Presumably, we'd be getting them into treatment. You know that we're going to have lots of folks who will have co-occurring disorders, and so as a result, we'll probably be getting them into inpatient treatment to begin with, and eventually halfway houses or other sober living facilities to try.
So will that be a coordinated effort between the teams I mean, there may be some attorneys that say, great, here's a new option, but there may be a bunch of people kind of lost in the system, or others that may not have that, who sort of takes the lead on saying,
That's why we stole.
let's go into our mental health pod and figure out who's here.
Well, that's why we stole a great employee from the sheriff's department. That's why Mary O'Neill is
Okay.
On our team. She's got her connections, and she's going to be able to help us get some folks funneled into the program, in addition to the fact that lawyers will know this program is available, and if they discern that their clients are good candidates, they're going to try and pitch it to a DA in the course of their negotiations, and they're going to try and get us some business. So.
And thank you very much,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
And one last question for anyone, I'm not sure who wants to answer that. You listed the different qualifications of the program. What happens if someone isn't able to willingly participate or isn't deemed competent? If we have such a severe case of somebody that doesn't have the ability to say, yes, I willingly participate in this, or is so in an incapacitated state that they can't comprehend that this option, if they can't willingly participate, do they just sort of rot away in our jail system, or do we have another opportunity to help support them?
Yes, sir. So that's a great question. So the one thing that mental health court will not deal with is people that are incompetent and people that are not guilty by reason of insanity. So if either of those scenarios come up, then they will maintain their course within the court system, where the law has certain provisions in it for restoring competency, and then at that point, once competency is restored, then we might track it off into mental health court, or we may proceed. But there's also a provision for being found guilty, not guilty by reason of insanity, and that's a legal posture where basically a court has jurisdiction over that defendant and then can order certain mental health type related things out of Title 33. And Judge Sword's here, and he could probably, Judge Sword's still here? Okay. Okay, well, but so there, it's a different track.
Got it, okay.
So I think, mental health court in Knox County has been something that General Allen's been involved with for a very long time. We've piloted a bunch of different cases, and I think what we'll see is, your question about getting him out of jail really quick, that's a great question. And the General has been very concerned about not making this process overly administrative to speed that up. And I think what we'll see is a lot of folks that we know who these folks are, and they're going through the system just round and round and round. They might have gone through the BHUC, and now they're into the next stage because they don't qualify for the BHUC. We'll have those folks. But then we'll also have folks that are going to commit serious crimes, and there'll be a much deeper vetting process in that. And then also we'll have folks that are dealing with family situations where, because we don't have Lakeshore anymore, they have to call the police. So they may be calling the General's office asking for help that way.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Judge Cerny,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a few questions. Will these participants, will they be housed by this court, or where will they live?
The answer to that is it will probably vary from person to person. I can tell you that I remain very optimistic and very hopeful about eventually being able to cobble together a way to provide housing. You may know that the Veterans Treatment Court provides what we call a transitional house, which is a dumpy little 900 square foot. You wouldn't want to live there necessarily, but sometimes our folks would prefer living there, sleeping on the couch, to being in a shelter. And so we do, in fact, provide a house for about 6 to 8 participants. And that gives me hope that maybe one day we'll actually be able to provide housing as well. But that's aspirational in character and is only in Chuck's dreams right now. And all these people behind me are probably surprised by that at this point. You look surprised, but it could happen. And we do have a history of being able to provide temporary housing. But we would coordinate with our case manager for the purpose of finding housing for folks. One of the few things that I know about mental health treatment is that it's much easier to get a person to be stabilized and start approaching controlling their mental health situation if they're actually in stable housing. It's much more difficult to do the reverse, get them stabilized and then try to find them someplace to live. So we are going to be working with some folks who are homeless, and we're going to be trying to get them into stable housing for sure.
And how many did you say the program would accommodate?
We're hoping to get up to 30 with 2 case managers, and then at that point, now correct me if I'm just, spouting off here, but I would anticipate that if we get to the point where we're at, 40, 45 participants, we're going to need a 3rd case manager, at which point we're going to be going back to the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services and saying, give us more money, we got to hire somebody.
And how will these be prioritized? Is it going to be a first come, first serve?
Absolutely. There's no other way to do that.
And then once as people fall off, is there going to be a waiting list? Because, you won't be able to get everybody at one time. Will it be a waiting list when some fall off maybe? Or how will that work?
You probably have enough familiarity with the way I've handled recovery court and veterans treatment court to know that I'll try not to keep folks waiting on a list. So if we get to the point where we're at capacity, I'll probably be twisting case manager arms to take one more participant to try and help somebody, because my viewpoint is, respectfully, that if I'm able to help in some way, I want to try. And that's been my pattern with Veterans Treatment Court and Recovery Court as well. As a matter of fact, I've worked those guys pretty hard,
Well, I
Typically, if
personally
some-
appreciate you and all the work you do, and I know the Defense
kind.
Bar certainly does. So once the August 1st comes, how will that be? You're gonna, we're gonna get applications, or what will be we're like, okay, we're ready, and then the defense attorneys can start meeting with clients and turn the application in? Is that how it will work?
Exactly. We have, we even did a little CLE. You could have gotten an hour of continuing legal education. Did a little program on some of the great work that Sharm and Eric, they've got some great folks who've been their representatives to our Recovery Court and Veterans Treatment Court. They've coordinated with our new mental health court director for the purpose of making that process uniform across the specialized or problem-solving courts, if you want to call them that. Recovery Court, Veterans Treatment Court, and Mental Health Court will all have similar application process now, and will have similar forms. As a matter of fact, I think we're using the same form with a checkbox as to which court it's determined that the participant would be best fit for. Candidly, I anticipate that we may find a veteran who also has mental health issues that we're going to be trying to figure out what is the best fit, Veterans Court or Mental Health Court perhaps. You know, we may find some folks transitioning back and forth, so we're going to have a kind of uniformity and collaboration. I anticipate we're going to have some synergy between all three courts. So I'm really looking forward to providing quality services not only to the participants but to our community.
Thank you. I'm very excited to hear this.
I am too. Thank you for your support.
Commissioner Schoonmaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this question would be for Mr. Hammond. In the 7 other courts that are in Tennessee and you had visited many of those, did they find that someone who entered this program after a couple of weeks, since they're not incarcerated, bailed and went to another state?
I don't know the answer to that. Casey actually visited those. I went to Davidson County, but do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, absolutely. With any of the 3 treatment courts, anyone can abscond at any time. And so there have been instances where participants are gone in the wind, and sometimes they return, and sometimes they don't. So certainly that is that is a possibility that happens.
Okay. And then the budget request from the state, is that very similar to the other jurisdictions' current budgets?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the Tennessee Department of Mental Health Substance Abuse Services, they're the ones who've identified or allocated the funds for each mental health court.
Okay, so we're getting the same amount of funds that would be comparable to Davidson County, whoever else?
Correct. To my knowledge, I haven't seen their allocated amounts, but from what I understand, each of the programs are receiving similar. They've taken one lump sum and appropriated it to each county.
All right, thank you.
Commissioners? Oh, Commissioner Hill?
I think this is a wonderful program. I'm thrilled to death that you all are doing this. I'm wondering, I don't think at the moment, and I just glanced at the breakdown, that there was any additional funds for attorneys or magistrates or anything like that in this budget. And I know Eric and Charm and all of our judges that you have got more than you can say grace over already in the amount of work that you are asking your attorneys and your judges to do. Is this going to take more time? It sounds like it would take a lot of extra time for y'all to do this. Not that I don't think you should do it, but is that something that you could see needing in the not too distant future?
I suspect it's probably going to shuffle time, is what I think is probably going to happen. Until we get the program out and running, it's obviously, there's always things that you don't necessarily know how it's going to play out. But I'm suspecting that a lot of the individuals that we see coming into this program are individuals that we're probably having lots of interactions with already. And the idea would be that we're having lots of interactions. The person's having a lot of criminal legal system involvement. and we're frustrated because we can't get them the resources and the help that they needed. Arguably, if we're able to get the individuals in this program the resources they need going forward, we're probably going to have fewer interactions with them. Right now, it is pretty typical that we have interactions with individuals, and we're very frustrated, and we're spending lots of time trying to figure out how can I get this person access to the things that they need in order to be successful. If we have assistance and some of those resources available, I would say arguably it should hopefully lessen over time. Although I would certainly agree that probably in the first 6 months, 2 years, we're going through growing pains and learning how to, we've got 30 lawyers are going to have to learn, to do things just a little bit differently. And so maybe on the first several months, maybe a little bit more work. But the hope is that we're going to help these people that come through, and they're less likely to be my client in the future. And so that should hopefully move the needle a little.
Judge Cerny, Judge Cerny, do you see that in the same as far as actual court time?
I agree with what Eric said. From the prosecution standpoint, I appointed Justin Pruitt, who is an assistant of mine back in January of 2020 to be our mental health prosecutor. And so he has been dealing with mental health cases in our office exclusively for a couple of years now. And so we really are dealing with these folks anyway, whether they go through mental health court or whether they go through regular sessions court, whether they go through criminal court, our office is still dealing with them. So it just really gives us a different place to deal with them and more resources, as Eric said. It actually, I think, if it works correctly, will lessen our load to some degree, because it will actually be court and court staff who are doing the things that we're already have been doing for quite some time on our own. We've been trying to find the housing, trying to work the plans, do the things that the caseworkers are actually going to do now. So hopefully, if this works well, after the growing pains that Eric mentioned, I think that it will probably lessen our load to some degree instead of increase it.
I'm going to interpret your question just a little bit and try to anticipate what I think you're truly asking. Do we anticipate that at some point in the future we'll be coming to you asking for you to fund an additional prosecutor or an additional assistant public defender? And the answer is no. Because every participant would not only have the lawyer that has been either hired or appointed to represent them, but they would have a representative from the public defender's office, and also there's a representative from the DA's office. Justin Pruitt and Megan Newman have been absolute rock stars, and they have helped. And by the way, thank you guys. You should know that. They need a raise. They've given of themselves selflessly and given up their time for the purpose of staffing recovery court, veterans treatment court, and they are going to be, they've indicated their willingness to continue with mental health court. And I hope this doesn't seem self-serving, but does it take additional time for myself? Yes. And I'm going to tell you, I absolutely love this job. I love being a sessions judge. I've done it since September 1 of '98, and I've loved every minute of it. Not every minute of it has been like as much fun as at other times, but my response to the fact that this is such a cool job, and let's be honest, it's not like I'm going to miss a payment on MasterCard. I'm doing okay. Y'all pay me pretty good, so I try to give you a pretty good full day. But at the end of the docket, this one particular little old lady comes and wants more free legal advice, and she keeps bugging me like once every 2 weeks. I stay there until I try to help her with as best I can, and if I can't give her good advice, I refer her to, Legal Aid of East Tennessee or whatever. And if I have the opportunity to help somebody through what I do professionally, this is a great job. My response should be help somebody if I can. So, and that's what I'm witnessing with respect to the professionals that I'm fortunate to work with. You know, Ron Hanover has been a great director of Recovery Court and Veterans Treatment Court, and he has a great staff. I'm so proud of Gloria Smith and Lauren Crick. I'm so proud of Casey Stone. I'm grateful to have an opportunity to work with Mary O'Neill. I'm really proud of what Charm Allen, I apologize, and Eric Ludden have done, you know, with respect to working so hard to get this up and running. I'm really proud of our mayor. I'm proud of Mike Hammond. He's a rock star, and you should know it. You know, I know there's some other efforts that have been made in this direction, and I'm grateful for those folks too. There's some folks who are trying to work on a homeless court, and I hope to actually help them facilitate what they're doing. But we have the good fortune to work with really nice people. I have good friends in this process who I have great respect for. And I think we're going to make a positive difference in this community. And I think that I think you're getting a good bargain for what you're paying us. But thank you for asking that question.
Oh, and I couldn't agree more. And
You're kind. Thank you.
And I think you all, I think you all do remarkable jobs trying to be mindful that it doesn't become overwhelming. But thank you all for doing this.
Commissioner Schoonmaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who can answer this, but tonight, Commission is going to approve the funding, the Knox County portion of the funding for the Behavioral Health Center for a total of $1,415,000. How many people do you think that once this gets into play will be derived from the Behavioral Health Center?
I'll take on that question just because the general has me on the operations committee of the BHUC. You know, what we're trying to do is we're trying to like make this linear. So, you know, not stack services on top of each other, but have a continuum of services. So the BHUC would be an entry point type service that would build maybe later on into the mental health course. So hopefully there won't be, you know, it'll be more continuous than taking a siloed approach. Does that make sense? So I think that they're still going to need all the money you're going to give them. And then, you know, we'll do this over here with mental health court as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, commissioners? Seeing none, thank you all so much for this presentation. Feel free to reach out with any follow-ups, and commissioners, feel free to reach out with any questions to Clerk Hammond. He would be more than happy to respond to those. All right, thank you.